Hey team, and welcome to another video in the Astrological Magical Elections video series. In this video, we're going to talk about magical electional opportunities that are available to us from the Leo full moon on February 8th until the Pisces new moon on February 23rd. And I guess we're going to go ahead and get this out of the way pretty quickly because there are no magical elections that are really worth sharing for this 2-week period. So great, thanks for watching. Just kidding. So not really kidding about there not being any magical elections really to share this 2-week period because there aren't. These kinds of things happen. We're dealing with astrological timing and we can't control where the planets are going to be. And sometimes they're just in really shitty configurations that are not really conducive towards talismanic creation, such as now. The only planet who's really in any form of dignity right now is Saturn. And even then, there are still some issues with making Saturnine talismans, which is why we're not talking about it. But it's also, a waning moon phase, and those are just kind of more generally difficult to kind of advise about. More generally, they tend to be more malefic, and there's like whole other kind of thing about that. So instead of just talking about nothing for this 2-week period, I threw it out to my patrons, like what would be some things to talk about during the times we don't have any magical elections. I do pop up every now and again. And I got some really nice ideas, some feedback there. And today what I really wanted to talk about is recharge rituals, kind of the next step in talismanic creation or, talismanic maintenance maybe would be a better way to phrase it. And so recharge rituals are not something that are really talked about a whole lot, especially, the magical tradition itself and even contemporary practitioners are really focused on the creation of the talisman, which is obviously super important, probably the most important point of when a talisman is made. And of course, the astrological conditions and configurations that talisman is made under will tell us, what that talisman is capable of, being good or a bad influence and that kind of thing. But there are also two other types of rituals that are utilized a lot in astrological magic, or at least that I recommend. There's the consecration ritual and then what I call the recharge ritual. So more typically what happens is there is, the creation ritual that is involved with the actual talismanic creation, and a lot of times the consecration ritual will be right alongside that. Typically, a magician makes a talisman for themselves, so they just go ahead and do the consecration part of it, kind of get that out of the way. But if a talisman is made for another person, then the consecration ritual will logically happen afterwards, after that person has received the talisman that they had created for them. But the other part of it too is the recharge rituals, which are more about reconnecting to the planetary or a celestial spirit that is involved, kind of reconnecting and establishing and maintaining that relationship between the individual who is using the talisman and the talisman itself. So this is where astrological magic really kind of crosses more into a theurgic type of practice from, say, a more straighter sorcery type practice. Obviously, you can use astrological magic and astrological talismans in a more kind of one-off sorcery type setting where somebody makes a talisman or is given a talisman and the talisman kind of works on its own in the background. And from here, we kind of use our general rule of thumb that's given to us through the tradition, mainly through Marsilio Ficino, I believe, to where the substance a talisman is made from will determine kind of how long it lasts. So the talismans that are made of harder materials, your stone, your gems, your metals, they're going to last the longest. Whereas your like paper and your more like degradable, biodegradable talismans will last the shortest amount of time. So the material that a talisman is made out of is one component in determining kind of how long it will last, but another component is the active relationship that is sought between the practitioner and the talisman. And like I said, this is where we get more into the theurgic role of astrology and magic. So the recharge rituals are themselves very simple. You don't have to kind of go all out for them because it's really all the money for the production value, we'll say, it really should go into the creation ritual. But the recharge rituals are more about kind of repeating or resetting the original creation ritual. So what I mean by that is you will include elements from the creation ritual in a more minor degree to the recharge ritual itself. So recreating elements of the creation ritual for the recharge ritual happens in two ways. The first is timing, and this is something that is going to change depending on what specific type of talisman you're trying to do a recharge ritual for. Talismans for like fixed stars or for lunar mansions, those are recharge rituals that you're going to perform roughly every 27, 28 days when the moon has returned to that mansion or that fixed star. So if you have done if you're trying to do a ritual for a third mansion recharge ritual, then every time the moon comes back to the third mansion, you'll do it that day. Or if you have an Alkaid talisman, every time the moon returns to the conjunction of Alkaid, you'll do the recharge ritual for the Alkaid talisman. Kind of that idea. You're recreating that that timing or that connection. For planetary talismans, you'll want to do this every day, not every day, I'm sorry, every day, but you'll want to do it every weekday of that planet. So like if you have a Venus talisman every Friday, if you have, a Mars talisman every Tuesday, that kind of thing. So the planetary talismans are a bit more needy, whereas the fixed star and lunar mansion talismans are a bit more long distancey. So the other part of the recreating is going to be the materials, and for that you'll recreate by using the same incense that we used during the creation ritual. And of course, every kind of lunar mansion or star or planet has certain incenses ascribed to it, and so you just kind of reuse that one. And then you'll also, for me, what I recommend doing is, so taking a step back, when I do like lunar mansion talismans or fixed star talismans, because they are very moon focused, I use either 4 or 9 of these little like white pillar candles during the ritual. And the number like is kind of interchangeable. They're both important numbers to the moon. 4, of course, for the moon phases, and 9 is just the magic number of the moon passed down through the occult tradition. So I'll use either one, either depending on how many candles I have at the moment, because I don't always have 9 candles, or depending on if I want to keep the talisman around for a little bit longer, I'll use 9 candles. And the reason why is because I'll take those candles after that creation ritual is done, and I'll reuse one after each, for each recharge ritual. So like this candle here, you can see it says the 10th mansion. This was the product of a 10th mansion, or this was involved in a 10th mansion creation ritual sometime back in the day. And so I just have a few of these kind of half-burnt 10th mansion candles, and every time I do a recharge ritual for my 10th lunar mansion, I'll just burn a candle for it, and burn the amber incense, which is associated with the 10th mansion. And during that recharge ritual, the main focus really is to kind of just sit and be with the talisman. Like you'll want to do like a meditative practice and just kind of reconnect with it. And it's kind of like calling your mom every Sunday, just kind of keeping in touch, talking with the spirit and kind of like giving it updates about what it's doing and like how things are going. Because sometimes you'll find out that a talismanic spirit's kind of initial plan of attack to solve the problem, it might not be the best one, or brings up kind of unintended consequences. And that's really, this recharge ritual is really your moment to be like, hey, thanks so much for everything you've done. I can definitely see areas of improvement, or maybe not. If you haven't yet, that's totally fine too. And just be like, but I think maybe we should change our attack plan for XYZ, like this has popped up. And so it just gives you a bit more of an engaged relationship with the spirit to help direct it, and to really focus in on that, because it's really the relationship between a practitioner and a talismanic spirit or a celestial spirit that's going to carry through and make the astrological magic practice something that is worthwhile and worth doing. Of course, during this time, not only will you want to thank it and just kind of check in with it, you'll want to kind of resuffumigate it, send it back through the incense smoke, just to kind of give it an extra kick in power. And planetary talismans are going to be very similar. They're just going to occur weekly, basically. You'll resuffumigate them with whatever incense was used in their creation, if you can, or a substitute is totally fine. The planets have a wide range of herbal material for incenses to utilize, so you have a lot of room there. And you kind of do the same thing, thank you, sit with it, and just try to get a better understanding or sense of it. The recharge rituals are themselves really simple, and you want to try to do them as often as you can. Skipping a couple of times isn't a big deal, but you'll probably notice that the efficacy of the talisman, what it's doing, will start to fade over time. The general idea is that certain talismans have like a certain lifespan associated with them, to where their effects just kind of wear out, and you should probably get a different one. I have a third mansion talisman that's been working for about like almost 2 years now, but kind of the general rule of thumb is like lunar mansion and fixed star talismans are about a year, but it's kind of arbitrary, really. Like if you've got like a really good, really solid, well-made talisman that you're keeping up with and keeping clean both materially and spiritually, then it can probably last you for a very long time. Whereas you have to be careful with like the paper talismans. Of course, if they start to rip or tear, that'll hurt it. Kind of things like that. Degradation to the physical form will cause the celestial spirit to leave. So make sure that you're keeping them in the best condition that you can. So like if you do have a paper talisman and it rips, or if it gets a hole formed in the middle or anything like that, then you probably will need to replace it when you can. The recharge rituals are also a really great time to provide offerings to the celestial spirit. But of course, that's kind of what the suffumigation is for too. But if you want to give something extra, that's totally fine. Just anything like that, anything that makes it more personal and makes the connection deeper and more intimate is going to make it a lot better. So, all right, that's really all there is to say about recharge rituals. They're not very complicated. They're not, big productions. They're just very simple, very intimate, but they tend to be very powerful. So, I really recommend them to anybody who is, not only has purchased or made a talisman in the past, but is also looking for a more kind of structured way to approach astrological magic. It gives you something else to do rather than just wait around for talismanic creation opportunities. So, hopefully that has helped you guys out, give you some more ideas, kind of know where to go from there. So I hope that's helped you guys, maybe given a little bit more understanding or how to go into astrological magic a bit more deeply. And then let's just hope that the Pisces new moon provides us with more astrological magical opportunities to talk about.